few limbs that have fallen down here. There's a couple from 3-4 years ago, there's a couple from last year, and there's 3 or 4 new ones there. A few smaller ones in the trees. Another couple of bigger ones over here. It's quite a winter for limbs coming down, so lots of cleanup to do. Just taking the opportunity to check out the new spaded tree field, using the cooler weather today to take advantage to walk around, observe. It's one of the things you always got to do on a tree farm is observe what's going on. You know, make sure trees are in good shape, make sure there's no pest damage. Suffered a little bit this winter. There's a little bit of browning on some of the needles of a blue spruce row here. Big tamaracks are okay for the most part. Some down the far side got a few limbs near the bottom chewed off. One at the very end got deer rub on the trunk, so we probably lost one for sure. Our row of white spruce here, they all look okay. No brown needles or anything on them. Where we took the most damage though was on the tamarack row here. With the smaller tamaracks, these guys were 2 to 3 feet tall when we planted them, but now the far end especially is very short. Some of those are eaten down to 5 or 6 inches now, so that's quite a big setback for those. But not sure if it was rabbits or deer, but I'm thinking possibly more rabbits, just because the damage on the bigger tamaracks is all lower down. This is our mulch pile here. We were grateful to be able to get a bunch from a local arborist. Well, not super local, he was down Lethbridge way, but he had a job to do up here and needed a place to drop his mulch, so we were grateful recipients to take that, and certainly helped him out from having to truck him away further and costing him a bunch of time and money. But this year will hopefully spread some of this around the trees down here. Use some of it, garden up the top coast. Another limb that came down this winter. It's just there's so many limbs to clean up this year. We have some older ones in here to clean up as well. So still lots to do. Just not as nice to do when it's cold like this and have to bundle up a bit more. Oh, you have a light spring jacket on, but still not as nice as when the sun's shining and be able to move around a little easier. Have some baskets and burlap ready to go. I spade a few trees this spring. It's another couple poplar limbs that came down there. A few branches littering the road here. This is our big chipper. It's kind of a oddball machine. It uses a old truck engine. It looks like a 1950s engine. Has a big drum in there to chip up wood. It can handle like up to 8-inch branches, but it's a high-speed drum, so really noisy. Really have to watch where you're standing when you're running it, because it'll suck in pretty much anything when the blades are sharp. Our blade's a little dull though, so you need to get new blades for it. But should be good once we get new blades. Could do with a little TLC on the paint job and stuff, but paint is cosmetic. Engine itself is in good shape, runs really well. Didn't have any issues at all with it last year. So it's the front of the engine here, so you can really see where I say it's from an old truck, because it kind of has that look to it. That really powers along, so engine's real smooth. Most of our spruce field here are in good shape. There's a couple that showing you some browning needles further up especially, but down here is where we've been spading the trees from lately. It's been pretty good, so pretty happy with how they've done. We need to improve our weed control a little bit, but it's one of those things. We want the weeds there, or do we want nothing there? And right now we'd prefer weeds over nothing, just because we need to get the soil improved, and having something growing will improve it better than nothing growing. Another poplar limb here that fell down this winter. A whole bunch of old limbs and stuff that have been piled up along the edge. I want to clear that out. It can be a bit of a fire hazard when it's dry summers like we've had. There's a couple of spruce here that are showing a few brown needles on the inside. It's kind of surprising, because you know, all that snow should have kept them pretty insulated and had a good amount of moisture in them, but it was a dry summer, so could be an effect of that. This tree here is in real rough shape. It was one that looks like it was probably previously spaded. I had a bunch of those around here that were previously spaded, and it cut off the roots, of course, in the spading process, and after you do that you need to water heavily, and just haven't had the ability to do that so much, and you know, there's so many scattered around that we just couldn't get them all. One of our failed spaded trees here. Some of the ground here is quite hard when it's dry, so we don't always succeed. So that tree has to go through the chipper here soon. Coming up here to a low spot in the tree field, we have kind of this low dip that comes across the property here. You can have quite a river running through here when the next door has their dugout filled. You can start to run down here. But the plus side is, if you look at the ground, you can see all sorts of clover and stuff growing here. So the ground here is really good, actually. I want to see this year if we can, when we mow this area, if we can gather up some of the clippings and spread them around elsewhere, just so we can spread some of the nutrients around. Some of the bigger trees here. One in the end is not doing so well. That looks like that was spaded at some point and left as well. Previous owner had a few contractors come in and do their thing, but they didn't quite respect the property as much as they should have, and previous owner was having some health issues, so he couldn't really do much about it, unfortunately, so we're kind of left to clean that up a little bit. But gotta feel sorry for the guy. He loved this place. He did a really good job building it up, but you know, when your health starts to fail, you gotta look back and decide what you want to do with the rest of your life. And he wanted to travel, and it's hard to travel when you're on a tree farm. So he moved into town, and then of course COVID hit, so he couldn't even travel. But we stayed in contact with him. He's that's actually been over to Ukraine. He was driving refugees across Europe for 3 or 4 weeks. So that was kind of an interesting thing. He wanted to do his bit, and you know, he can't exactly go fight or anything, but he went and drove refugees to safety, so that was kind of neat of him to do. Another one of those trees that's been spaded and left. You can see the burlap at the bottom there. So when they get spaded like that, they need a lot of moisture, and of course the last couple of years have been really dry, and you know, there's just so many trees scattered around that are spaded and left that we just can't water them all. So fortunately we're going to lose a few, and you know, we'll just have to deal with it when we get there. Some of these bigger trees here are actually a little bit smaller caliper than you'd expect for the height of tree they are, so some of these we could probably squeeze in our tree spade, although it's not the best for them. We'd really like a bigger tree spade, but we just can't justify the investment right now. Those tree spades are not cheap, just because they're a low volume product to make. There's not a lot of people making them. So big tree spade that we do some of these bigger trees here, you're looking at easily 30 grand to buy one of those, and you know, we just don't have that kind of money sitting around. So just have to hope that someone with a bigger spade wants to come in and buy some for cheap. You know, we'll sell them off to someone who wants to spade them themselves for a good price. So you know, hopefully someone will want to do that here and take some of them off our hands. It'd be a shame to see a lot of these trees just have to be cut down. Some of them are cut down for Christmas trees like this one, but that's not a bad thing. But yeah, there's a lot of pretty nice trees in here. There's some that are not quite so nice, like in there. They're decently full, but they're narrow and tall. But for a shelter belt application, that would be a great tree. You know, maybe not so much for a landscape, but for a shelter belt, that would be great. Some of our other trees are quite wide and fat. They lost their leaders at some point during their life, and that caused them to widen out more than grow vertical. But you know, that's kind of a neat effect in your tree too, really. Makes it nice and full and dense, so it's quite nice for the garden. This one has a bit of browning needles on though, next to a tree that was taken for a Christmas tree, so probably wasn't quite getting enough light on those needles, and now that it's opened up to the sun, they've gone a bit brown just because it's not used to the light. Lots of trees here. Absolutely love walking through the trees. One of my favourite things to do, especially when I'm stressed or depressed or, you know, going through a rough time. Just come and wander through the trees here. You know, it's kind of like being in the forest in a lot of cases, although there's nice big trails. But one of the downsides to the trees that are here though is there's a bunch in the middle that just haven't gotten the light or the space, so you can see in there some of the ones that are hidden behind are in real rough shape. So once the trees on the front are gone, the ones behind will just be chipped up for wood chips. There's not a lot we can do about that, but yeah, you just kind of have to make do with what you can. A lot of these trees were planted quite a long time ago, up to 20 years ago, some even longer than that, I think. But yeah, it's so nice and thick and dense back here. It's nice to walk through, but not so nice for the trees. They could really use a little more room. At some point we'll have to start thinning them out here, so we can hopefully sell the odd one. But some of these ones up here especially are just almost getting too big to spade. So some of these bigger ones up here will definitely have to just become wood chips. Kind of a shame. They're beautiful trees, but you know, once they get to a certain size, it's a lot harder to spade them. A lot more expensive to spade them. You know, some of these big trees you can get in a 90 or 100-inch tree spade in, but you know, those things cost $300 an hour. You can only move one tree at a time. So, you know, if you're an hour drive away, that's $600 just for the driving alone. You know, take another hour to dig it and plant it, so you know, $900 to just plant the tree. It's that size, so not cheap, but some people want trees that big, which is nice, but just not quite enough for all the trees that we have. But if you know anyone that needs some big trees, definitely send them our way. You know, we'll sell them off pretty cheap just to clear them out. Because, you know, at some point here we gotta make space to plant the next generation out, you know. We're doing that a little bit in the bottom field there, the new spaded tree field, but, you know, there's a lot of trees back here that need to clear out at some point too, just to make some space for the next generation. One of our biggest trees on the spaded tree field is just this one here. This guy here is probably 25 odd feet tall. He's quite big, quite nice. It's done really well. This is actually a white spruce, I believe, rather than a blue spruce. Most of our spruce are more blue spruce, but the main way you can tell the difference, the needles. See how these are shorter, they're softer. You can touch them, doesn't hurt or anything. If you go to a blue spruce, like ones over here, needles are a lot stiffer and they're very pointy, so you definitely notice when you touch them. Like these guys here, a little bit longer, but they're really pointy. Don't want to touch them much. You can brush them a bit, but you can feel just they're a lot stiffer. So a lot of people say you can tell the difference with the colour, but it's not always true. A lot of the time you can find some white spruce that have a blue tinge to them, and there's a lot of blue spruce that don't have a blue tinge to them. You know, like this blue spruce here. This blue spruce you can tell by the pointiness and the stiffness of the needles, but it's green. So you can see I have at some point or another trimmed a few of the lower branches off of some of these that aren't doing so well. Need to come around with the tractor to pick those up. I can be a little bit scattered here. It's one of my downfalls, I guess. There's so much to do that I often do a bit here, do a bit there, do a bit somewhere else, and don't finish any jobs anywhere. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch more lower limbs here that need to be trimmed off. But that's less of a priority than some of the other stuff around here, though, just because, you know, until someone wants some of these bigger trees, there's not as much point in looking after them as much. It's a bit of a shame. Yeah, lovely trees. Lovely to walk around. But, you know, we are a business. We have to make some money somehow, and trees are the way we're making money. Now, coming up to the area where the trees haven't done so well, you can clearly see the difference in needle colour. I mean, this tree here is a nice blue hue, not many needles lost, and then next trees it's a lot more green. You know, needles are a lot shorter, they're not looking as nice of shape. You know, we've got some trees like this that have a whole bunch of needle loss. It's just one of the areas on the tree farm I think that soil just maybe isn't quite as well. You know, either that or the trees just weren't quite as hardy. I know the previous owner said that he had a few trees that he got initially that weren't as hardy, so he was starting out, but you know, I don't know if that's maybe part of the issue here in this section, but they're obviously hardy enough because they've lasted as long as they have. Back around to our shelter belt here now. See a whole bunch of little branches and stuff that have fallen here. I have a couple of big branches we have to try and take out at some point. So a few branches overhead and one tree here that has passed away there. I have to clear out at some point, but don't know quite how we're going to clear some of those branches up top there. It's a long way up, and you know, can't really climb poplars very easily. They're quite fragile limbed, so you don't want to climb up them too much. So you never quite know when something's going to give way, especially when you got older branches up top that aren't doing as well or have died that you need to take down, and you know, you have to climb up there. It's pretty risky. If one of those comes down as you're climbing up, you have nowhere to go. So at least if you can get a boom lift or something in there, then you know, you can duck down in the boom lift, and the cage around should shelter you for the most part, but climbing up just doesn't sound too appealing to us. So one day we'll get a solution to that, but another one of those areas where we could do with a bit of investment. Another area we need some investment is soil. We got so many spaded holes that we've left behind by ourselves and the previous owner that need to be filled. A few other tree ferns around, they just kind of spread around the soil that they have around and just fill in the holes, but you know, at that point then you're just selling soil with every tree. You know, that's not something you want to do. We don't want to destroy the land for the sake of a profit. So we end up having to buy in a bunch of soil, which of course isn't cheap, but the flip side is you lose soil. So we'd rather build the soil and keep something here for future generations rather than just shipping it out with every tree. This is the section that's really rough shape that I was working at a few days ago. You can see I have quite a pile there of limbs, but I need to be able to get the chainsaw around here and take a few of these down. These bigger limbs, bigger trees, we can take right down to the big chipper when it's ready to go, and just throw them straight through that. So at least that's one good thing about having a big chipper like that. Not so good for the smaller stuff like the branches here, but for the big trunks, super easy to run them through and get a good product out at the end of it. You know, something that we can either use as mulch or run it through gasifier. But yeah, this area is another area, still part of the same area where the trees are a bit rough. It did surprise me though, the soil in some places here is quite soft. You can see, you know, it's quite soft and spongy. But I don't know if there's just something missing, or I know the previous owner used a lot of soil sterilants in some areas, and those can affect some spruce, because most spruce are shallow rooted, so they can get a little bit of a hit from some of that stuff. I don't know, maybe if that was a factor, but another pile here that I have to get the tractor around to clean up. But this one's going to have to wait a little bit more. Still quite a pile of snow along here. And of course where I drive through is right where this pile of snow is, so just have to be a little bit patient for that to melt down so we can get the tractor in. Oh, I should be glad when I don't have to trudge through the snow anymore. I don't have to trudge through the reeds instead, but at least that's not quite as bad. Here we are back at the pond here. Quite a nice area. We have some old willows that have long gone, but birds love to stand in their branches. And again, the pond really dropped this year. The last 2 years it's been so dry in the summer that over winter the pond will drop a good 10 feet. So that's quite significant. You know, the pond is around 3/4 of an acre, so that's a heck of a lot of water to soak into the ground. But fortunately, once the irrigation's on, we can top it off. So I had to clear a few of the old willow limbs here. They were hanging down across the path and making it difficult to walk along here or move, so took a few of them down. Take a few more down at some point here, but want to replant around the edges here. Get some trees around the pond here for shelter for the birds, and you know, just to make it look nice and feel nice. Have a few towering poplars here that are suckering a little bit, so it's kind of nice to create a bit of treed area at the end here. A lot of people don't like poplars, but you know, I quite like them. They're very hardy trees. They do sucker, but you know, in a lot of cases for farms that's not a bad thing, especially in cases like shelter belts. You know, if they sucker along the shelter belt, you get free trees in your shelter belt. So something you want to consider is suckering trees. That's certainly a way to fill in the shelter belt. You know, trees like the trembling aspen would be brilliant for that, but not a lot of people plant them in the shelter belts, which is kind of surprising, I think, to some degree, but not as big as poplars. But you know, they do sucker profusely, the trembling aspens, so for a medium-sized tree they will fill in pretty good, create a nice thick forest around your shelter belt. And you know, if they come start to invade in a little bit to your crop or your yard or whatever, it's easy enough to just keep them trimmed down with a mower or cultivator or whatever you need to do. You know, easy enough to control them if they're getting in the way. Another corner here that has some poplars around the pond. These guys are way up. There's a few Swedish aspen here too, a couple of them. But yeah, these poplars really grow quick. So really good to see. The suckers that pop up from them grow even quicker. I mean, these little ones here I call them little. They're, you know, already 12, 15 feet tall. Those things started out 3 years ago. 3 years ago they weren't there. Yet they're 15 feet tall already, so suckers grow really quick, especially when they're attached to the mother's roots still. So that's another reason why it's good to encourage suckering in your shelter belts, just because you'll get that quick growth. Bunch of trees around the pond here that are quite nice shape. They're quite fat, but trunk caliper on them is getting quite big, so again you need that really big tree spade to be able to move them. So fortunately those probably won't go very far, but you know, they do look nice around the pond here, so we'll try and leave these guys as much as we can. In behind we might clear them out and just leave a couple of rows around the pond here. That way we kind of get the sheltering effect of the big trees here, but can have some room in behind for the next generation. Definitely have to do a bit better job around the pond next year of keeping the weeds down and keeping it cut, but it's quite a nice pond. It's a big amount of water to attend when it doesn't drain into the ground every winter when it's this dry, but still, it's nice to have. Nice to see the ducks in it in spring and summer. They often hang around the pond here, since there's a lot of shelter for them around the edges, and some good water here. I'm sure the odd little fingerling gets into the pond here from irrigation, because of course there's irrigation comes off the Bow River, so it comes down the canals. We just have a coarse filter in our property for the main water use. We have a fine filter, of course, for the drip irrigation, but coarse filter up the top, a little baby fish can wiggle its way through that probably not too difficultly. So birds definitely like it. Last year we had a heron come around, so it's kind of interesting to see that. Probably looking for fish in the pond. Don't know if it found any or not, but you know, just the fact that it was here is pretty cool. I like to see lots of wildlife around. Lets us know that we're doing a decent job on the ecology side of things, you know, making sure that the land's pretty healthy and you know, getting a nice diverse amount of wildlife. Coming into another area here where the trees haven't done quite so well. It's mainly due to spacing here. You can see the ones that are on the edges are real good, thick and nice, not much needle loss, but ones that are in behind are a lot worse for needle loss and lost a lot of needles. So one of those things where they're a bit too close together for the size they got to. If they were dug when they were smaller, they would have been perfectly good trees, but since they didn't sell at the time that they needed to, or previous owner was having health issues, whichever it was, they've just now gotten a bit past their prime for the spacing, and a lot of them unfortunately going to have to become a little bit of mulch or gas fire material. But definitely one of the toughest parts around the tree farm here is all the trees that we will have to take down at some point, but I just have to get used to that. It's just something I didn't really grow up with, is taking down trees. I was always brought up with raising them, nurturing them, helping them grow, and never did we really have to take any down, so it's kind of a new experience to have to take them down now, but I'm sure other people are kind of laughing at me for that attitude, but you know, that's what I was raised with, so not a bad thing, but just a different thing. I've a little grove down here of Russian olive. A lot of people will call Russian olives invasive, but I certainly haven't seen that effect from them here. Bunny running off there. I would say if anything's invasive, the chokecherry was far more invasive than the Russian olive, but of course chokecherries are native, so they don't call that invading for whatever reason. But yeah, the Russian olives on the property a little older, so you can see the trunks are a little rougher shape, but at some point we'll have to probably clear these out just to make room. There's need to think about the business side of things, making room to grow trees, because of course that's how we'll earn our money here. A few nice little spruce here though, looking pretty good shape. Ones like those I want to get the tree spade on this year or next to get them out, and you know, whether we'll sell them to someone on the farm here or send them to auction, I'm not sure yet. I want to definitely increase our volume of spaded trees. We have a lot that we can get our spade on, like this one on the edge here. That one there is quite a small caliper, yet good height. Not quite as full as some of the other trees, but you know, it's still a good little tree. You know, sure someone will want it, just a case of at what price they want it. You know, that'll be the challenge for us, is making enough on some of these trees. It's kind of funny that you know, you look at the other tree firms around, they're able to charge, you know, $300-400 for a tree that's that size, but of course they've had many years of care and nurturing on their trees, whereas a lot of the trees here haven't had as much care just because of the previous owner getting sick for a while, having some health issues. But anyway, I should probably stop walking and talking and get some work done. The snow seems to have stopped now, so a few elderberry bushes here. Those things seem to pop up all around the farm. But, yeah, I should get some work done now that it stopped snowing and warming up a little bit again. So I'll stop talking now, and we'll catch you next time.